Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
Good Tuesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. It's the 21st of February, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that by calling the Alaska Weather Information Line at 800-472-0391. Find us online at weather.gov/Alaska, or send us an email. If you've got a question about what you see, you've got something that you're not able to find, we'd love to help you find what you need on any one of our websites, whether that's the Alaska Aviation Weather Center, Weather Unit, or the Tsunami Warning Center up in Palmer. Any one of those places, we're happy to help you find that information there and get that into a format that makes sense for where you are in Alaska and how you use that information. You can always find us on Facebook and Twitter, as well as YouTube. After this show, a little bit later in the evening, you can find this complete show online. If you tell it to let you know when the new show is published, you don't have to do anything. It'll just pop on your phone there and tell you when it's ready to watch. So you can find that very easily. And of course, in the afternoon, we do our daily afternoon map briefing, kind of a preview of what we're going to talk about here on Alaska Weather. And you can find that just by searching Alaska Weather on YouTube. Here's a look at some of the warnings, and boy, there are a lot of them, starting across the eastern Alaska Range and going into south central Alaska and all the way down the Kenai Peninsula. We have winter weather advisories posted tonight. For the Talkeetnas, we're going to start up north. Could see around 4 to 6 inches of snow around Talkeetna and south. Into the mountains you go, and we could see about 5 to 7 inches of snow in that region. This starts tonight and goes into tomorrow morning. For areas along the Parks Highway and generally to the west, probably about 2 to 6 inches of snow. So a lot of that will be west of the highway. For the Mat-Su area as well as the Anchorage region, we're probably looking at something on the order of about 3 to 5 inches of snow. And again, this will start in tonight after about 9 o'clock and go until about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if you've got some driving plans or even flying plans, this could impact your travel as we head into tonight and into tomorrow. As you go down to the Kenai Peninsula, generally north of Clam Gulch, looks like about 3 to 5 inches of snow will be possible for the winter weather advisory there. And south of Clam Gulch, that could be on the order of 5 to 10 inches of snow. So it does look like it is going to snow, and enough that it could impact moving around south central on the road system and across areas in the eastern Alaska Range. It's going to be a wind issue there. You could be talking about gusts over 40 to 50 miles per hour, and that'll continue through the overnight hours as well. So a lot going on there in the yellow shaded zones in south central. Now let's move up to the north and west, and we'll come back to the Bristol Bay region here in just a minute. Across the around Ambler and the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, all the way out toward the Chukchi Coast and Kotzebue Sound region, and into the interior of the Seward Peninsula. The orange colors are a winter storm watch. So this is a little bit further out in time. We're actually skipping ahead toward Thursday and into Friday now. All this is happening tonight. This is what we're watching for as we head into Thursday and Friday for weather that could be developing. And it looks like there is going to be some weather in the region. The winter storm watch could bring as much as a foot of snow in some cases to the Kobuk and Noatak valleys as this gets into Thursday and Friday, on top of some gusty winds. Now, one concern around the interior of the Seward Peninsula would be not only just snow, but warm enough temperatures that could create freezing rain in the region too. So keep your eyes on the weather and the changes coming for the end of the week, Thursday and into Friday, for the orange shaded regions. Now, out toward the Bering Strait communities, St. Lawrence Island and the western tip of the Seward Peninsula, a blizzard warning is in effect tonight, and then it'll go into the early morning hours tomorrow, actually noon to 6 a.m., let's say, for 5 to 10 inches of snow with winds up to 60 miles per hour. So this will start tomorrow and go until 6 a.m. on Thursday. That'll continue for you. In the interior of the Norton Sound region, a winter weather advisory is posted for accumulating snow as we get into tonight and tomorrow. And for all of Southwest now, change the map one more time for you. Look at all the red. That is a blizzard warning that is in effect right now. because of poor visibility and snow. It looks like the worst of the snow was going to be around King Salmon and south, and if we look at the satellite picture in just a little bit, you'll see that clustering of the brighter white cloud tops in here. That's the snow that's eventually working its way towards south central, but passing over the Bristol Bay region tonight. But the bigger issue with this, probably for many of the coastal communities, is the wind and the poor visibility that's going with that. And that's generally north of King Salmon and north of Cape Newenham, all the way up to Macquarie and Hooper Bay, and probably not as far east as Bethel and many of the interior villages there. But coastal villages, you're probably seeing an awful lot of that wind there. So hunker down. Conditions should improve as we go into the overnight hours. So after about midnight, it looks like the wind will start to settle down for you and visibility should improve. But a blizzard warning is in effect right now for a large part of Southwest. So as you look at the maps here in just a minute, you're going to expect to see at least one wave and maybe even two waves. And here is the first wave that is affecting Southwest right now. As you put that in motion, you'll notice this big bright white clustering of cloud cover across Southwest. That's moving eastward, and that is the snowmaker expected to move into South Central later tonight. This area of low pressure here, the core of it is not too far away from Bethel, and this is where most of the wind is moving right now, so over the outer part of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta. And if you're in the coastal villages, you probably are experiencing a lot of that wind right now. A look up to the north shows that conditions aren't too terrible across Kotzebue Sound and the North Slope, but it won't be this storm that's really bringing you the big impacts as we get into Thursday and Friday. It's going to be this storm. So there's two waves of weather working through. One of these is working into South Central. The next one is really going to work over the Bering Sea with a lot of warmth and a lot of moisture moving northward. So the second wave will be what we're focusing on for the Northwest. For Southeast, you're wondering, well, what about the weather? Looks like generally dry conditions have been in play for you for at least a little while. And you'll get a taste of this perhaps as we get into the latter part of the week, but a lot of what you'll see will really focus, it looks like, on the outer coast. You might get a little bit of snow shower activity across the northern inner channels tonight, including Juneau, and across the northern Gulf Coast, but a lot of that seems to be fairly quick in passing, so maybe moving in tonight and out by tomorrow morning. But all in all, a lot of the focus for any real active precipitation concerns, at least for the next few days, seem to really hold across the outer coast for Southeast. So quite a bit going on, but the focus is really for South Central and the West Coast and the Northwest as we get into the next several days. High pressure sitting across the interior today at 1,025 millibars. We did have a few pockets of snow on the periphery of that. You can see that across the North Slope and across the western tip of the Seward Peninsula into the Bering Strait. Here's our low pressure system, though, at 990 millibars, periods of snow and wind moving across the southwest coast and Bristol Bay. Generally dry conditions across the Gulf. Several circulations there across the northern Gulf, one of those sitting just offshore of Yakutat and Sitka. And then behind that, a wave of drier air and the next low pressure system across the northern Pacific at 946 millibars. So it's already got quite a punch. A little bit of rain reported around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska this afternoon as we move into tonight. As the colder air is working eastward, it looks like some of that warmer air will replace more of what you've been seeing across the central chain, so a better chance for some light rainfall across the central Aleutians and westward. Low pressure is just beginning to make its way over Shemya at 950 millibars, so some strong winds working through there. Low pressure will move ashore for southwest. You can see both circulations continue their trek eastward, and that is going to set up south central, the Parks Highway, the Matanuska and Susitna valleys, with a good opportunity for snow, that and the Talkeetnas as well. The good thing is for the west coast, as we get past the midnight hour, the core of those stronger winds will also start to diminish. So the winds probably won't howl quite as bad. They will still be breezy, at least through the overnight hours. And here's the snow showers across south central, or southeast. Some of that tries to work its way across the inner channel. So I didn't quite paint that in over Juneau, but there's an opportunity for a few flakes there. Low pressure across the north slope. Again, we'll bring a few more clouds across the coastal plain, but a lot of that doesn't really seem to produce a great risk of any snow showers just yet. One thing to watch for, though, would be a little bit of light snow around the Fairbanks region as we get into tomorrow. Probably not at any great or severe level, but maybe an inch or two. Across the Copper River Basin and westward, snow will begin to end from west to east during the day. A lot of this really kind of ramps down during the mid-morning hours for South Central and Anchorage. Out across the west, warmer air is quickly moving back into southwestern Alaska, and those southerly winds will represent a pretty decent temperature change for you as this moves northward as we get into Thursday and then eventually Friday. That strong southerly flow working into the western Brooks Range will add an opportunity for some heavy snow across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. Again, some of that could add up to more than a foot in a few places. Out west, low pressure across the western Bering is still going strong at 952 millibars, and the cold front working across the central chain will begin to allow that colder air moving in from west to east as this wave moves along with the low pressure system. This will eventually kind of die off, and the focus will be across the west coast as we head into Thursday. And you can see that there around the Bering Strait at 1,003 millibars. Periods of rain there now are back across Bristol Bay, while we have periods of heavy snow and wind and potential winter storm warnings if everything stays on track for parts of the western Brooks, the Kotzebue Sound region, Seward Peninsula, and maybe even a risk of some freezing rain involved in that, as well as blowing snow and poor visibility and gusty winds. Across southeast, high pressure is really your friend here. It may be a little cool, but looks like generally light winds across the region with some snow showers across the outer coast, and clouds should start to break up across south central and the eastern interior as we get into Thursday. Now, as we look at temperatures across southeast today, we saw readings in the 20s and 30s by and large, even above freezing for many locations there. Prince William Sound in the 20s. Most of the Seward and the Glen and the Parks Highway were in the low to mid-teens. South of the Alaska Range, north of that into the middle Tanana Valley, anywhere from 5 to 10 below. Fort Yukon was 8 below. The North Slope from 5 to 20 below in many locations today. 15 to 30 below for the Kotzebue Sound region. Nome was about 13 below. Bethel made it up to 1, 8 below for St. Lawrence Island, still windy there. 2 for Macoriac and Nunivak Island. And around Bristol Bay, single digits and low 20s there for King Salmon. 30s and 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. 39 for Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and out west, temps stayed above freezing for the rest of the chain. St. Paul 29. Overnight low temperatures anywhere from 20 to about 35 below for many in the central and western interior. For the North Slope, 15 to 30 below should do the trick for southwest and Bristol Bay. Teens and 20s there. 20s and 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, 31 for Kodiak Island, and anywhere from the teens to mid-20s for most of southeast. Sitka 29 and up to 39 tomorrow. Many areas there in the southeast back in the lower to mid-30s, south central in the mid to upper 20s, 38 in Kodiak, single digits for Fairbanks tomorrow. Fort Yukon should see 7 below, the North Slope around Barrow 9 below, but many locations eastward around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse 23 below could be possible for you. 3 above in Nome, and southwest back in the lower to mid-30s, and much warmer for Unalaska and Dutch Harbor and the Alaska Peninsula. You see those temps there in the 40s thanks to that southerly wind. Flying weather, IFR conditions are expected across parts of the Yukon and the Kuskokwim valleys tomorrow, south central and out west from St. Paul and St. George into the central chain. As we get into the afternoon, notice how that weather's shifting eastward and poor visibility will develop west of Fairbanks down in the Tanana Valley. Around the southwestern coast and into more parts of the Copper River Basin and southward into the northern parts of the Gulf and coastal range there. MVFR for the North Slope. For your pass conditions, Anaktuvuk Pass looks to be VFR to start for most of the day as well. Adigan Pass, MVFR conditions by the afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see IFR conditions to start with some improvement throughout the day. Rainy Pass will hold at IFR as well as Windy Pass through the day thanks to snow. Isabel Pass, we expect to see marginal conditions develop there. Mentasta Pass, VFR. Tonita Pass will start at IFR, maybe some improvement by the end of the day. Portage Pass, IFR at least in the morning, that could linger into the afternoon. And MVFR conditions may develop for Chilkoot and White Pass throughout the afternoon. As we've seen with the maps, there is potential for some freezing rain toward the end of the week up north, and with that comes a lot of warm air building to the south. That's gradually working its way northward now. The surface freezing line hovering across southwestern Alaska shows us that an overrunning type of weather pattern could be shaping up, so something to watch for if you're a pilot. Of course, that brings the risk of severe icing potential across the west coast, so keep your eye on this chart the next couple days. As you look at the icing potential now, we don't see a substantial risk for freezing rain, so we're not alerting for that just yet. But right now, levels are anywhere from above 3 to about 8,000 feet in the west, about 3 to 6 across southwestern Alaska tomorrow, with the threat reaching occasional moderate, and across the north and eastern Gulf Coast above 3 to 8,000 feet. Several waves working their way across the east. Each one of those weakens as it travels east, but right now the more potent of the 3 would be across the west and the central Bering. The jet stream potential has a large ridge still sitting across the central and southern parts of our state, but the more pronounced trough out in the west is what we're watching, and that is guiding that strong southerly flow up through the Bering and up across the west coast and feeding those surface storms with plenty of moisture across south central Alaska. At 9,000 feet, you can see the trough across the North Slope. Northerlies working their way into the Bering, keeping things pretty cold, But opposing that is that southerly flow across the central and eastern Aleutians with a wave of low pressure across the central Gulf. Wind speeds are a little stronger there than what we see at 3,000 feet. Winds are around 35 knots here. Across the interior, westerlies moving through the region at about 25 knots from the west, and strong southerlies just south of the eastern chain in the Alaska Peninsula, 30 to 60 knots, 65 even further west, and southerlies work all the way up the west coast. As far as turbulence goes, we'll continue to watch for isolated severe across the Capes and southwestern Alaska and Kodiak Island into Shelikof Strait tomorrow. Occasional moderate across the Alaska ranges could extend a little bit farther east through the day. And across the chain below 4,000 feet, expect to find considerable chop there at least, and maybe some low-level wind shear as low pressure is working its way over the chain throughout the next 24 to 48 hours. That's your aviation weather. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine forecast. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and joining us here today is Eric Stevens from the Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, GINA for short. And Eric, you frequently come on the show to tell us about these really cool things that we're doing with satellites over Alaska and how we can use these really awesome tools. But I'm thinking all the while there has to be a mad scientist somewhere working on the next cool thing in the satellite laboratory. What is being developed today?
Right. Well, you know, when I was a kid growing up in the boonies in North Dakota there, on Sunday after church, the old people, like my parents and their parents, would gather and have coffee and talk. And I kind of eavesdropped on them a little bit. And the theme of a lot of these conversations seemed to be, well, isn't it amazing what they can do these days, someone would say.
Sure.
And I was thinking, well, I don't know, I was too young.
Right.
Well, now I'm old enough in the weather satellite business.
You can remember when.
The new generation of weather satellites, I'm starting to say, isn't it amazing what they can do these days? Because it's always improving.
Yes.
Maybe an analogy here is like television. Television started in black and white, then it went to color. Analog signal transitioned to digital here a number of years ago. Standard definition becomes high definition. Right. Well, weather satellites are changing too. First weather satellites went up around 1960, not that long ago. No. It's comparatively young science. And every time a new series of satellite is launched, we learn from the past, so the mad scientists decide, well, we could make the next satellite even better in such and such a respect.
Yes.
And now the United States is on the verge of launching, or in progress of launching, a series of new geostationary satellites that are better than ever before. Okay. Let's take a look at some of the previews of what these new satellites can do.
Peek inside the lab here, okay.
Yeah, and so we'll peek in, and here are some mad scientists and mad technicians dressed in bunny suits. This is, believe it or not, this is the business end of a weather satellite under construction in a clean room. You don't want a speck of dust on the lens of a weather satellite's camera. So this is done in a clean environment. They are building a geostationary satellite there.
Oh, cool.
This new generation of satellites, if you had to answer the question, why are these better? Why do we care? Okay. You could answer it with 3 words: faster, better, more. The new generation of satellites are faster than the older ones. The images are sharper, they're better, and there's more spectral channels. We'll talk about that.
Any one of these called Steve Austin? It sounds faster, better, stronger.
Yeah. You know what, though? These things cost more than $6 million.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They're pricey. But they are an essential tool for the Weather Service to fulfill its mission of protecting lives and property.
Exactly.
You got to have the tool to do the job. And it helps all of us when we get the accurate forecast, the warning in time, and this is the tool. Faster. On left here, we see what the old generation of satellites could scan in 5 minutes. On the right, that's what you get in 5 minutes, the whole planet, or at least one side of it. So it's faster. That means you can take more images over a given amount of time and make smoother movie loops out of that. Because animating movie loops really helps you highlight a feature that maybe you can't see as well in a single image.
Absolutely does, yep.
Let's zoom into a small piece of real estate like Texas.
Sure.
And we can see here a satellite that has a 1-minute movie loop visible light. You can see thunderstorms boiling there.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, the rippling of the top of the thunderstorm. This is a fun movie loop. We're going to be able to see things like this more and more often because of the new satellites being generated. Some things are only evident in animation. So that's faster. Well, what's better? We're able to now have sharper imagery than before. The Japanese have a satellite that uses the same imager that is on the new generation of satellites that America is launching too. An imager, That's just a word for camera. It's the camera on a weather satellite. We have something called the Advanced Baseline Imager.
Sounds important.
ABI. It's important enough. It has an acronym. Everything's an acronym. Well, an ABI-like instrument is here over the Western Pacific, and we can see this color image. This is what a human eye might see if you were riding on the satellite.
Okay.
But it's a little bit fuzzy. With new technology, you can post-process the image taken by the satellite to highlight and sharpen some of the features. So this image here of the Western Pacific then becomes this image. Thanks to the processing techniques, yes, this is the newest technology. So we've got a new satellite that can provide better data than ever before. And on the ground, we can process it better than before as well to really sharpen up the imagery and to give us a better view of the weather than ever before. So faster and better and more. What do we mean by more? Well, on the older generation of satellites, the imager, the camera, had 5 slices of the spectral pie, visible imagery, infrared imagery, something we can't see from the human eye. A lot of different slices of the pie. We're going from 5, the new imager has 16 slices. Each slice has its own relevance. Some are best for volcanic ash, for smoke, for dust, for telling the difference between smoke and dust, which can look similar under some infrared channels, but other ones bring out certain things. All of these 16 bands are important. In fact, some of the mad scientists, they didn't want 16, they wanted 24. There's always more you can do. But that'll be the next generation of satellites. So now we say, isn't it amazing what we can do these days? And you know what? It makes you think, well, what's the future going to be like too? It's so important to be able to know what's going on now in the weather. If you're going to forecast the future, you got to know where things are now. And satellites are the way to see that, especially in Alaska, where we don't have as many observations down on the ground. The satellites fill in the holes.
Yeah, really important stuff. And I love hearing about what we can see right now, but I love thinking about what is possible in the future. It's amazing stuff. And since you paid for it, it's a good time to learn about it. If you'd like, check out the website at www.goes-r.gov. And as I understand, it's a really easy website to use.
Oh yeah, a lot of good information about what these new satellites mean to Americans. And it's the Weather Service's mission to protect lives and property, and this is the tool how to do it.
Cool stuff, Eric. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, and thank you for joining us right here in Alaska Weather Facts. We'll see you next time. All right, here's an update on your sea ice edge. The leading edge of ice is about 40 nautical miles north and east of St. Paul, so it wouldn't be a surprise with the current weather situation for you to see some strips maybe tonight and tomorrow. But don't forget, there's another storm right behind this, and that's going to start pushing that ice edge further north with the warmer air and the southerly winds. So probably not going to get a whole lot closer as what you're seeing right now. Here's a look at southeast now. The winds are generally light from the north across the inner channels, 15 to 20 knots. Inside waters looking at 3 to 4 foot seas. The outer coast, a westerly flow around Yakutat, southwesterlies coming into Crosstown, and northwesterly south of Sitka. Those are running 15 knots with a 7-foot sea for Thursday. Winds are still fairly light, even variable up north. Looking at 8 to 9 foot seas across the northern outer coast and the Lynn Canal, northerlies at 15 knots. South of Sitka, northwesterlies 20 knots with a 10-foot sea, and fairly light winds for the Clarence Strait, 10 knots on the northwest flow there with a 2-foot sea as you get into Thursday. For south central, northeasterlies coming down Cook Inlet over the ice, not too bad, 15 knots, 25 knots as you get past Kenai at 7-foot seas there. Northwesterlies a little stronger over the Barrens with 12-foot seas out into the western Gulf, and northeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound 25 knots with a 6-foot sea. Light and variable winds on Thursday. The winds settle down inside of Cook Inlet 10 to 15. The winds come in across the Barren Islands from east to west with a 4-foot sea there, and southerlies inside of Shelikof Strait. East of Kodiak Island, a southwesterly flow at 20 knots with a 9-foot sea. Lighter winds as you move further northward, 15 knots with a 6-foot sea outside of Resurrection Bay. Inside of Bristol Bay, 20 knots over the ice from the south. Southerlies down the coast at 35 knots with a 9-foot sea. And south and westerly flow across the North Pacific, 20 to 30 knots with a 9 to 13-foot sea. That's Wednesday. For Thursday, you get a little bit more of a southerly flow from Castle Cape to Chignik with that 13-foot sea. Southeasterlies over Bristol Bay, and higher seas from Sandpoint to King Cove and down to False Pass. You're looking at 18-foot seas off the coast there on a 30-knot wind from the south. Across the Aleutians, tomorrow will be your windiest day, 40 to 45 knots in all areas with seas ranging from 14 to 21 feet, 26 feet from Adak to Kiska, and 30 feet from Kiska to Shemya and Attu with that 45-knot wind. On the Pacific coast, you're looking at seas as high as 20 to 27 feet. Again, that would be for Wednesday. For Thursday, the winds diminish as they turn to the south and west. Remember, low pressure is still hovering right around in here, but it's moving northward, and warmer weather and rain will be moving back through the region with 10 to 15-foot seas across the Bering Sea coast, 20 to 22-foot seas on the Pacific coast, and across the western chain, 24 to 28-foot seas there for your Thursday. For the west coast, northeasterlies over St. Lawrence Island coming out of Norton Sound, easterlies off the YK coast, and you'll see winds as high as 50 knots west of St. Matthew. But again, that ice is working its way southward, at least for another day, before it starts moving northward on a stronger southerly flow that we already develop around the Pribilofs. 40 knots with a 17-foot sea there. That diminishes to 20 knots on Thursday with 15-foot seas. And look at 30-knot winds elsewhere across the central and northern Bering for your Thursday afternoon. Across the North Slope, light winds, 10 knots all areas. Southwesterlies for the Beaufort Seacoast, northerlies from Barrow all the way down into Kotzebue Sound. For Thursday, northeasterlies pick up, feeding into the weather that's coming northward with that warmer air and the chance for heavier snow across the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. 15 knots for the Beaufort Seacoast, northeasterlies from Barrow, and then stronger easterly flow moving out of Kotzebue Sound at 40 knots on your Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, snow showers are possible around the Juneau region and northern parts of the Panhandle as we head into tonight, but the big issue is accumulating snow and a winter weather advisory for many parts of the western Kenai, Anchorage, Matsu, the Parks Highway, all the way up to the Talkeetnas. The heaviest snow will be up around the Talkeetna Mountains there, and this will end as we get into the mid-morning commute. Now, blizzard warning still in effect for the southwest coast. Conditions should start to improve after midnight tonight. Another wave will bring a chance for heavy snow and freezing precipitation across the interior of the Seward Peninsula, the heaviest snow around the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.